Hello, everyone. Thank you for checking out this special episode of Really Dicey. This is Manny, and I am here with.
Dr. Jason Bowers, the creator of Five Acts, The King in Yellow RPG, as well as the creative lead, the designer, basically the sole person behind the YouTube channel PhD&D.
Thank you, Jason, for taking the time to talk to us about this very interesting project. I've been really gaining a good kick out of horror role playing games recently. Lately, I've been really interested in the Elder Gods like Cthulhu. But from what I understand, this game is not inspired so much by Lovecraft, more by a writer named Chambers. Could you elaborate about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, The King in Yellow is the name of a collection of short stories published in 1895 by Robert W. Chambers. The first four of those stories are quite famous, at least in horror fiction circles, because they concern a fictional stage play, a text within a text, as it were. Anyone who reads this stage play seems to go a little funny, and they often disappear in mysterious ways. The text that they read is called The King in Yellow, a stage play. And it's a stage play that, based on the snippets of it that we get in the short stories, it appears to have been written not only about, but on another planet or from another world. And there's a lot of strange, sort of gothic and cosmic imagery about black stars hanging in the sky in a world with two suns that sink into vaporous oceans. And there's some kind of malevolent or seemingly malevolent entity, some otherworldly being called the King in Yellow. Presumably, that's the being for which the stage play in the fiction is named, and that's also, what the text is named after, the real life text. Um, but here's the way in which our game is inspired by it. In all of Robert W. Chambers' stories, what you have is an unreliable narrator who's struggling with, some kind of like unrequited love or unrequited yearning, right? Desperate people who have read The King in Yellow, and then they encounter supernatural things or seemingly supernatural things, and by the end, you're wondering what really happened. How should you interpret the series of events? Was this person actually totally deluded and the descriptions in the story were hallucinatory, or did they really have this sort of supernatural connection to another world called Carcosa, and to this weird magical glyph called the Yellow Sign, right? We wanted to make a game that basically put the PCs in the position of being unreliable narrators, right? That a lot of strange things seem to happen to them. They seem to have supernatural powers. They have rather odd convictions ever since reading The King in Yellow. But, after the supernatural adventure takes place, there's a spot in the game which we've reserved for kind of going around the table and asking a question, a sort of hypothetical of, what if there were no supernatural events in this world? How would you explain the way that you got the guards to go to sleep? How would you explain the way that you found the one single book in this giant library of thousands of novels, right? Like, there's a fun element in our game, a fun mechanic in which we invite not only the GM or maestro, as we call them, but also the players to go back and reinterpret the series of events and story beats in the game, so that by the end, what happens is the GM and the players together end up telling a kind of, well, Chambers-esque story, a gothic horror tale with unreliable narrators. Did the PCs really use otherworldly magic to save the world and conquer it, and against all odds and in the face of supernatural threats? Or are they just poor deluded fools who are stressed out from ordinary life pressures, and they committed a series of crimes with absurd explanations? Our game is not the first game to feature the King in Yellow. There are lots of really excellent games that do, but in the games that already feature the King in Yellow, for instance, Call of Cthulhu, Delta Green, Robin D. Law's own Yellow King RPG. I love these games, but in all of them, the PCs are investigators, right? They're investigators. They go out, they investigate. There's mysteries, they find clues, they follow the clues to solve the mystery, and that's cool. I love it. But protagonists who are investigators are never to be found in Chambers stories. There are no investigators in Chambers. There's plenty of investigators in Lovecraft's stories, yes, but Chambers stories are not about investigators. They're about poor, desperate people who are heartbroken and distraught with wanting something they can't have, And in the midst of that, they read The King in Yellow. And having read The King in Yellow, then a bunch of strange events occur, and you're left to wonder whether those events are the product of the character's distraught psyche or whether they're the product of that text, The King in Yellow. So
Mm.
we don't have a game about investigators. We have a game about unreliable narrators.
Interesting, interesting. If I
Yeah.
may ask, and I know you're a fan of horror, I follow your channel,
Oh yeah.
and you explore many different aspects of horror role playing games. But is this your first project?
It's the first original TTRPG that I've worked on. Um, Previously, I've published material for Fifth Edition D&D, especially Ravenloft. I've done that on DM's Guild. I made a little adventure. Well, it's 260 pages, 230. I made an adventure called Phantasms of Sri Raji. That's sort of like a sort of India themed horror adventure. And I've got a collection, PhD&D Ravenloft Adventures, which is like maybe a third of my videos, sort of rendered in writing that you can play. But this is, to answer your question, yes, this is my first original TTRPG product ever.
Well, and if I may ask, because creating content for fifth edition Dungeons and Dragons is, well, I don't want to say easy money, but if you want to make money in role playing games, that's where you go. So I'm curious, what made you decide to go in this direction?
Um, yeah, there's a few reasons. One of them is, uh, and I don't think I'm alone in this. Many of us have enjoyed playing fifth edition D&D for 10 years now, right? We've run Curse of Strahd, we've played in Storm King's Thunder. We love these adventures and we know them, but we also want to, try other kinds of role playing games, right? Games where you don't just roll a d20, add a numeric modifier to meet or beat a certain number, and then if you do, you hit the thing. And if you don't hit the thing. And hitting the thing means asset management in terms of, how many hit points do you have or how many spell slots do you have? And, resource management games with a d20, right? You want to try other kinds of mechanics. And so, I checked out games like Ten Candles and Bluebeard's Bride, and these games which focus not just on telling a story, but having mechanics that are about the story, right? Where the mechanics are less about losing hit points or gaining spell slots or whatever, and they're more like story beats or, up beats or down beats in a story, right? Robin Law's Hillfolk, for instance, is one of these. And so I guess like I was looking at indie games and I was thinking about how much I love the King in Yellow stories. And well, okay. Also, I have to be honest. I was also playing a lot of Heart: The City Beneath, and I really thought the system, the resistance system that Rowan Rook and Decker, that Grant Howard and Christopher Taylor designed for Heart, I thought this is a really excellent, like minimal horror kind of dice system, and the way in which it's minimal is really conducive to uh, telling a lot of different kinds of horror stories. I wonder if I can adapt this to a King in Yellow thing. So I guess it wasn't that I have anything against fifth edition. Or I love fifth edition. I DM it twice a week, and play a third time. It's just more that creatively I wanted to do another thing, and I think the dice mechanics that we've used and the rules that we've adopted, you couldn't really do them in fifth edition without a lot of extra and because extra also superfluous work. So I really wanted to, it's I guess part of the answer too maybe is just I didn't see this project as a financial one. Um, but I mean, believe me, I hope that we meet our funding goal and that we, are able to print the game and bring it to people and have it at people enjoy it. But we didn't. I didn't really make this game with like I know what'll make us some cash, right? It was much more like, I think I have an idea for a really good game. And I think it's good in a way that genuinely pays tribute to these King and Yellow stories I love so much. And I know other people love so much too. And it seems like right now with True Detective and a lot of other bits of popular media, the King in Yellow is, people are getting interested in that. And so now is a good time. There's a good atmosphere for maybe pitching this game, which I believe in on its merits, and hopefully based on that we'll make maybe not as much money as we would make if we were making fifth edition stuff, but enough, I guess, is the idea.
So you mentioned that this is not a game with investigators; it's with narrators per se.
Unreliable narrators, yeah.
So I can't help thinking, automatically thinking of like the rules from the Chaosium system.
Mhm.
So let's talk about how the game works exactly. How does how does everything come together with players and the game master?
Our game is divided into 5 serial parts called acts. The game is called 5 acts, and it has literally 5 acts. So the game is sort of chopped up into these bits. And these bits they consist in the PCs going back and forth between having nightmares and being awake. And these sort of inform each other. So, the game opens up with a hot start. The PCs are meeting each other for the very first time, but not while they're awake. They're meeting each other in a shared dream. And this dream sort of communicates to them some supernatural purpose and ideas. Tells them that they must conquer the world, that they are royalty from beyond the stars, and so forth. Then the PCs wake up in Act 2, they convene, and they proceed to try to do that. Conquer the world, as it were. Find the yellow sign, and with its power, conquer the world. They then have another nightmare and another sort of waking episode where they continue to pursue this goal. And by the end of Act 4, by the end of the fourth act, things should have gone off the rails. Things should be absolutely nuts, and the PCs should be in danger of losing their lives, or the planet should be in danger. And then you have a sort of part where everybody looks back and says, "Okay, what happened here exactly?" That's the general structure. Um, More specifically, in acts 2 and 4 especially, acts 1 and 3, right, they're nightmares. So you encounter these horrible monsters that are threatening the PCs and telling them certain kinds of clues that they need to follow in the subsequent act about how to find the yellow sign, how to conquer the world, what threatens them, that sort of thing. There's a little bit of like riddle mechanics there. But in the middle of acts 2 and 4, what, and this is kind of the core mechanic, it's a core mechanic of the game, is this fun interpretive mechanic. So the idea is that in universe, the PCs, they all have a copy of The King in Yellow, which they've been assiduously reading and consulting and thinking about. And they've come together. And so now what they're going to do is they're going to flip open their copies of The King in Yellow and consult it and ask like, what must I do? How do I find the yellow sign? How do I conquer the world and realize my destiny? And the mechanic for doing this is sort of fun. Our version of The King in Yellow has illustrations, crucially so. The stage play, I mean. And so in universe, the idea is this: there's a 4-step process to consulting The King in Yellow, the stage play. The players flip it open, and whoever is first in the turn order while you're doing this, they think of a scary image, right? Any scary image, could be anything. It could be simple, it could be complex, it could be grisly, it could be mysterious. You might think of like the pictures you see on horror movie posters at the theater or something. But the idea is that you think of a scary image and then you describe it. You roll a check to see if your character can hang on to an image so scary. But the idea is that, in universe, you've flipped open to an illustration, right? If that's the illustration you're going to go with, right, the next player has to interpret the image as a set of instructions, right? So the first player, they say, "Oh, I see a hand reaching out from the dark." Right? That's what the illustration is. The next player has to interpret like, what's that telling us to do? What must we do? I mean, we have to do something which pictorially is represented as a hand reaching out in the dark. Does that mean we need to all go into the dark and then reach out? Does it mean that we need to like grab someone? Do we need to cut off someone's hand? Or maybe we're playing at a time period or in a setting where somebody has the hand as an official title, like the Hand of the King. Maybe you need to do something with them. But it's up to the player. It's open ended because the illustration is open ended. It's up to the player to come up with a set of instructions, be creative. Maybe it's telling us to do X. And then, roll a check to see if that's in fact the correct set of instructions. And then, assuming you pass the check and that is the correct set of instructions, then it goes on to the next steps, which are to follow those instructions and then deal with the chaos that is probably going to ensue, right? And what's fun about this is because you have to start with a scary image, almost always the PCs are going to end up doing something that is absolutely baffling, definitely criminal, something that probably makes no sense, and their explanation for it will be, it was in The King in Yellow. That's what, we just have to conquer the world, and the instructions are in this book, right? perfect setup for then to look back and be like, yeah, maybe you were engaged with the project of destroying a rogue planet before it smashes into Earth because the King in Yellow, the stage play, told you to. But also, isn't that a little uh, far fetched? Perhaps your characters were deluded. If so, right? And so the idea is that we've got this sort of, so far all the mechanics I've mentioned are narrative. We do have dice mechanics. Again, we use the resistance system by Rowan, Rook, and Deckard. So the idea is this: most of the time, if your character wants to do anything that has a consequence of failure, you roll 2d10s and you take the higher of the numbers. If the number is 1 through 5, then you fail. If it's 6 through 7, you succeed, but you suffer some damage, or as we call it, strain. And if it's 8 through 10, then you just do it and you don't suffer any strain. And what it is for you to suffer strain. When you suffer strain, the idea is that you first roll a d4, and that's how much strain you take, and then you roll a d12. And if the d12 is above your total strain, then nothing happens. You just keep the strain. If the d12 is equal to or lower than your total strain, then you erase the strain, and then you become a little bit more monstrous. You gain a monstrous feature, right? 3 monstrous features, and then your PC's at, like, they're a full monster at that point. And there are ways of running the game where either that is a game over for the PC and they're out of the game, or there's a way to just kind of give them a worse ending. This is a one-shot game, so it's fun for everybody to be able to kind of play to the end. But the idea is this: is that every time you do something, there's a risk it'll cause you a bit of strain, and that strain will build up and up and up and up, and eventually that d12 is going to roll beneath the strain total, and then you're going to become a little more monstrous. And the idea is that if you gain 3 monstrous features, that's kind of a bad ending for your character. And we didn't have it. We didn't use hit points or sanity points or anything like that, mostly because we saw an opportunity to prompt player creativity here, right? You say you become a little more monstrous. Tell us how, right? That's fun. That's exciting, right? It's a lot. It's I think it's more interesting than just like, oh, my hit points are 33 now instead of 40. Oh no. Oh, okay. I guess I'm like hurt more. I know people describe like cuts and bruises and things, but we also all know that there are reasons why hit points don't actually correspond to just physical damage. Because that's not how the body works. And people often they try to have they'll add these other systems into 5e that represent wounds and stuff. We thought it would be fun if the corruption that's taking place is something that's a little fantastical, something that you could reinterpret at the end of the game when you're asking whether your characters were deluded. Did you really become a monster, or did you just flip out a lot more in public, sort of thing.
Hmm.
So we have like the dice mechanics from Heart the City Beneath. They're a little simplified, and then they're tethered to a set of rules about how to tell a story, a certain kind of story, a horror story where your characters do absurd things and think that they have every justification doing them, but then they're so absurd it makes you question what exactly is going on in the story, right? Are these unreliable narrators, sort of thing?
Speaking of illustrations, I love the cover art for this.
Oh,
It's spacious and spooky, and I love the idea behind it. And if I may showcase a little bit of this is
please.
the I believe the quick start for your game.
Yeah, this is our public facing playtest document, which has everything you need to actually play the game and enjoy it. It has all the rules. The main thing that it's missing is a lot of the amazing art that we have for the full product, as well as a ton of pre written content that you can just run, as they say, out of the box. We've got a lot of pre written scenarios, a lot of pre written situations involving monsters. There's a lot of fun stuff that we've worked really hard on, and we didn't include all of that extra stuff here. We just included the core rules and a snippet of the stuff that we've pre written so that you can have a taste and see if you want more. But yeah, it's a 48-page illustrated document that's got everything you need to play. We worked pretty hard illustrating it, writing it, doing the layout. I mean, as everyone does. I don't want to say that we put in work other people don't or anything, but
Hmm.
that is it.
It,
Yeah.
if I may ask, what is your inspiration for the design of this book? I know when this goes to Kickstarter, it'll be expanded and everything. But what is your vision exactly? It's I'm curious where you're going with this.
In terms of layout design, I guess that we're a little bit more wacky than your average 5e book, but we're not as wacky as Morkborg.
Hmm.
Morkborg is a master class in layout design to the point where you could enjoy a lot of their products just as like picture books, coffee table books, kind of thing. Um, we aren't that far into we aren't that indulgent when it comes to our layout design, but we are really into the idea of large sorts of illustrations that can take up more than just one page. And a lot of the art. By the way, I should mention now that we have two artists who have worked very hard on the art for this. Mel Williams, who drew all the monsters, whose monsters are absolutely amazing and spooky, and Sam Fontaine, who did the maps and the character classes, and his maps are absolutely incredible. There's one in here, but they're both just they're artists, they're people. We didn't use any generative AI or anything to illustrate this or to write this. The text is written by me, um, and what we I mean I guess stylistically we wanted to be clear and brief while also giving a taste of like the mood of the game. So here and there we've got these little indulgent kind of poetic passages describing certain things that you could bring into the game and have fun with. But otherwise we want the rules to be very simple, straightforward, and clear without any little jokes or cutesy asides or anything to clutter it. We tried to be efficient, in other words, with the delivery. Uh,
Hmm.
which is something I must say you can't really do if you're Morkborg, right? Like Morkborg is beautiful, I love it, but it's like you have to turn to like what page 32 or something and to realize how to play a character, and then it has like it's down in the lower right hand corner, and it's right next to like a 2-page spread of a spiked club that just says flail d6 or whatever, and it's like their style is very ornamental, but I wouldn't say efficient in terms of conveying information. We try to sort of be in between, right? More efficient, not quite as ornamental, but still a little ornamental, I
Hmm.
guess.
So let's talk about the Kickstarter campaign. What are
Yeah,
your do you have stretch goals? What are your plans so far?
our plans are to print and ship a really really cool book. A book that's 200 some odd pages. It includes not only the rules for the game, lots of great art, additional materials that are pre written that you can just run as soon as you've got the book, but also the original 4 Robert W. Chambers King and Yellow stories that everyone gets so excited about, that sort of are the unofficial canon for this mythos. We're going to include those in an appendix, and there's going to be some commentary by me about them, and that's the main thing we want to do. We also want to ship things to people as quickly as possible. As somebody who's backed many Kickstarters, it's very frustrating when it takes years for you to get what you want. Even a year, it's already frustrating. My favorite Kickstarters are where they just print a book and send it to you ASAP, right? There is a Kickstarter product about apocalypses that came out a little while ago. I can't remember what it's called. Um, it's something like the complete guide to ending the world or something. But I backed that, and I got the book within the year. It was great, and so we want to try to do that, and that means um, like obeying U.S. postal rates about media mail and stuff like that, and not. So there's certain kinds of stretch goals which we're just not planning on doing at all for the sake of efficiency. We're not going to do mold injected plastic minis or anything like that that would slow things down or require international stuff. We're not going to include dice or anything. But in terms of stretch goals, I don't want to disclose or commit to anything here, but we've been talking about it in our meetings, and we're definitely thinking of things like additional art, posters, stickers, bookmarks, things that you can either print or have additional, like VTT content, digital content we can also add on. But we want to stick to the kinds of stretch goals which won't slow down the actual product that we've got. In other words, we don't want to like add things that will then require us to go to a 3D printer somewhere or to none of that. We want to make a really good book that you can enjoy. That's the main goal we want to do. Send it to you quickly, and then if people really like what we're making and they want more of it, we will give you more of it. We'll give you posters of some of this great art. We'll give you, that sort of thing.
Hmm. So, if I may ask,
Yeah.
cosmic horror,
Yes.
it's a genre that's not dying anytime soon. It's even in the role playing world, Call of Cthulhu books are still doing very well.
Oh yeah.
Um, in Japan, they're a monster hit. Um, there's board games. There's new stories, new media coming out for it. Um, what do you think is it? What do you think is it about this genre that still captivates people?
Oh, okay. Uh, I think in general, cosmic horror captivates people because of uh, what the Romantics called the sublime. In other words, cosmic horror gives you the sensation of contemplating or being in the presence of something that you cannot grasp. It's too vast in its extent, in its size, in its complexity, where it just, that it outstrips your conceptual resources, right? You are able to categorize and think about things in a certain way, even a certain number of complex ways. But what you're faced with here, you cannot categorize. It is beyond you. And in that sense, you feel small, you feel dwarfed, you feel insignificant, you feel a little dizzy. It's like when you look up out in outer space and you think about how big the sun is and then how big Betelgeuse is compared to the sun. You have that sort of dizzy feeling. A lot of people liken religious experience to the experience of the sublime. Lovecraft himself certainly does. Lovecraft thinks that the best horror fiction is horror fiction that makes you feel like you're having a religious experience, kind of. Though Lovecraft himself and also his work is not religious in any way, of course. But I think that's why the genre persists, um, and rightfully so. I love it. I would mention, or I would add that the type of horror you find in Chambers, including its cosmic elements, it's a little different than Lovecraft's in a fun and interesting way. For Chambers, actually, contrastively, let me begin with Lovecraft. For Lovecraft, the idea is that the world is of so alien a nature, and the deep truths about it are so utterly alien to our minds that we cannot grasp them. And if we were to try, our little ape brains, to quote Matt Colville, would turn into applesauce, right? We just can't do that. The horror is that we cannot grasp the horror, as it were. With Chambers, it's not quite that. With Chambers, the idea is that you've read The King in Yellow, and now you've discovered like something profound about the world. That everything that you hoped it would be it's not, right? Everything that you had hoped for is gone. It's lost. Um, there is no. So think about the ideology of the 19th century decadence here, especially, right? The idea is God is dead, heaven is lost, uh, there's nowhere to go when you die, and nobody that you love in this world will ever love you back. And that's just the way things are. That's the truth of the world, right? And you can unlike Lovecraft's idea where you just can't know the truth about the world. With Chambers, you do know the truth about the world once you've read The King in Yellow, and the truth is so depressing. It is horrible. And I often think the proper way to read Chambers' figure of the King in Yellow, that character, is sort of like this. In the same way that the Grim Reaper is sort of an anthropomorphic representation of death, I think that the King in Yellow is meant to be something like an anthropomorphic representation of nihilism or pointlessness or purposelessness in the world. Um, and in our game, we try to sort of we emphasize that in the sort of game's official lore. You don't have to run a game that includes any of that, but like it's there. Um, and in our version of Carcosa, Carcosa is not like the lost city of R'lyeh where Cthulhu dwells. For us, Carcosa is heaven. It's like the Christian heaven, only it's been destroyed. It's destroyed. It just doesn't work that way anymore. There used to be a place that was all happy, full of saints and God on a throne or whatever, and you would go there when you die. Not anymore. It's destroyed. It's all gone. God is dead, literally. The King in Yellow is God's undead corpse. Our monsters include undead angels, and horrible things that emerged from the wreckage of heaven and the way that maggots emerge from old bread. Um, we our cosmic horror is very gothic and sort of oriented around like the 19th century Enlightenment era fear of a purposeless universe. And that's, I think it's of a different, slightly different flavor than like Lovecraft's sort of cosmic horror, where it's more about how you cannot even grasp the fundamentals. The fundamentals elude you. Here it's like, no, I grasp the fundamentals. They're horrible kind of thing.
Hmm. Do you feel that, how should I say it? Sometimes I think we have a prevalent idea of what cosmic horror is, especially
Hmm.
with certain elder gods. But
Yeah.
with your work, it looks like you're bringing about a different perspective, or maybe I should say that you're pretty much bringing back an old perspective that might have been lost because of the popularity that the elder gods are coming back in media. Do
Yeah.
you hope that your game might illuminate readers to think of cosmic horror in a different direction?
Uh, yeah, or at least at any rate, I hope that this work encourages people to, read the King in Yellow stories and sort of start writing horror fiction. Like check out how cool these stories are, and think of your own stories. You don't necessarily have to like write them down and publish them, but tell them at the table with your friends. We've got practically a recipe for writing a story like this, but as a collective group activity. Um, I don't think there's a wrong way to do cosmic horror. I hope that our flavor of cosmic horror here is refreshing and different and sort of enjoyable, as something kind of new, a little twist on the usual Derlithian Lovecraft stuff that we normally see in tabletop. But it's not as though I'm trying to correct a tradition or anything. I just want to add a different sort of. I want to add a new flavor of ice cream to the Baskin Robbins of role playing, as it were. Just to. I hope that people's perspective on cosmic horror is broadened. But I don't want to say that anybody's doing it wrong or that the other ways are bad or is better. I just want to introduce this new kind of aspect, which I don't think I'm coming up with. I think I'm just kind of trying to be truthful to Chambers, as well as to a lot of the contemporary fiction writers who have, also sort of engaged in this project, from Joe Pulver to, John Langan and Nicole Cushing and Robin Laws and these people.
Hmm. And that's great because as much as um, I'm fascinated by Lovecraft's work, I always felt that it was the editors and other writers that have worked on what he built on that really made cosmic horror as what it is today.
Yep.
Um, I mean, just an example, and I've mentioned this in other videos before. John Carpenter, like his movies during the '80s, I think if not for those movies, I mean, what you're saying here with the King of Hill kind of reminds me a little bit of the Prince of Darkness. That
Yeah.
movie, all of his
Yes.
movies, scared me the most, just because the theology behind it, of the
Yeah.
idea of who God really is. As a kid, it freaked
Yeah.
me out. It's like whoa, um, So I'm really keen seeing what seeing this book in its completion.
Oh.
If I may ask, if you were a narrator
Hmm.
um, in this story, if you were a character in this story, your five acts, The King in Yellow, uh, who do you think you would be exactly? Where would you fit in?
Well, me myself. Well, we currently have four character classes. Each one is inspired by one of Chambers' stories. We have a character class called the Pallid Mask. They have the ability to turn living things into stone. We've got a character called the Grave Worm who can rot things with a touch. We've got a character called the Organist who can sort of warp space and time. And we've got a character called the Repairer of Reputations who can blackmail people. Um, I don't know. I mean, these are deliberately a set of unwholesome, horrific powers to have. I suppose I would be the repairer of I would choose to be a repairer of reputations. I like to connect with people. I like to sort of work with other people, collaborate. Have these positive sort of creative projects, collaborative projects, And I guess the dark inverse of that, the bizarro version of that would be something like the character you'd play if you chose the Repairer of Reputations class, where you've got social connections aplenty, but they're all antagonistic and sort of like something sinister about it. I guess I would play as that sort of character. Um, I would never want to actually be a character in 5X The King in Yellow, because by the end of every one shot adventure, these characters are probably out of their minds, dead, or sort of lost in the surrealism of whatever they think was going on after they read The King in Yellow. It is sort of a bleak game in that way. We It's designed not to really have any happy endings exactly, except to the extent that players enjoyed the ending, making it happy maybe or something. But
Hmm.
it's yeah, like actually in many horror games, especially like Ten Candles or Bluebeard's Bride, um, it's almost a guarantee that the PCs are done for by the end, and we certainly sort of lean into that. It's not a hard and fast rule, but it's kind of the pattern that we set up with our rules for storytelling.
Is there anything else about this book that I haven't asked you about that you wanted to share?
The full book that we're selling on Kickstarter, and our campaign is going to go live this month. It's going to be about a couple hundred pages. We've got a good, sort of plans for a couple hundred pages, and most of it is going to be pre-written content. Lots of for one thing we didn't cover, but you can run in terms of a game setting, right? Both historical and in terms of location, it can vary all over the place. We've run games that take place in the Middle Ages. We've run games that take place during the Prohibition era in the USA. We've run games that take place in 1890s France. We've run games that take place on space stations way far away from Earth. We've run games that take place at deep sea drilling sites in the Mariana Trench, like in that movie Underwater.
Hmm.
Um, you can run it a lot of different ways, and to sort of emphasize that and demonstrate it, and also give players and GMs alike something to work with. We're going to include tons of these scenarios, um, where our scenarios are sort of like it's a setting. There's a lot of events that you can help yourself to, a lot of creatures and things that you can help yourself to. But we're going to have a lot of really creatively written, accessible play content. A lot of it I'm kind of proud of. Not to brag too much, but I'm a published author, and both in academia and elsewhere, and I'm proud of my writing. I tend to think I write pretty well, and if you like watching my videos, if you like listening to my content, if you like, the King in Yellow stories too, this will be a treat. This won't be a slog to just sort of like, oh my god, how do I learn how to play this game? We're intending for the book itself to be entertaining and well written, and to demonstrate that we can make good on this promise. We've worked pretty hard on the quality of the text and the playtest too. Anyone can get the playtest, by the way. You just need to go to our website, nilhemoth.com, NILHEMOTH. Sign up for our email updates. We don't send very many of them. It's mostly just to let you know when the Kickstarter goes live and give you access to some extra video content before it goes on the YouTube channel. But sign up there and you'll get the free copy of the rules. You'll get an email that gets sent to your inbox, and it has a link to the Google Drive where you can find the rules. If you don't see it in your inbox, of course, you can check your spam folder. Sometimes it goes there. But we didn't quite cover that part of just what the product will be, the quality that we're aiming at, and how you can get the free rules. So I thought I'd mention those.
Hmm. So I will put all the information in the description below for the video.
Great.
Um, Thank you, Jason, for taking the time to talk to us about this amazing project. And viewers, I know usually I would say something like, like and subscribe for Really Dicey, but you should really check out PhD&D. If you love really good introspective discussions about, well, I know you do a lot of horror, but you do a lot of really good lore of all sorts of different things. Dealing with role playing games, you should definitely check it out. Um, and I believe that's it. Any last words before we wrap up?
Thank you very much for having me on. I've enjoyed Really Dicey ever since I discovered it a couple of years ago, and I'll continue to watch your content. So thank you, and thanks everyone for watching.
I didn't pay him to say that.
He didn't. He didn't. I'm not a paid. Not an ad. Not an ad.
Well, again, viewers, thank you so much for watching. Stay safe out there. Again, all information is in the description below, and be safe out there. See you next time.